I would like to talk today about the transformation of human consciousness. I think that's a very, very important subject that needs to be talked about. Obviously, this one video is not going to be enough. There has to be many more interactions and interactions in the form of, maybe online discussions, in-person discussions, dialogues, seminars, what have you. So I think the subject itself is quite vast. The subject is quite complex, and therefore it will require various ways of understanding and delving deeper into this subject, which is transformation of human consciousness. Now, first of all, why is the subject very important? The subject is very important, especially in today's times, because human consciousness is at a crisis. Human relationship is at a crisis. Man himself, by man I include both man and woman. Man and woman, they are at a relationship crisis. The relationship crisis is within the family, is between two people, is between a person and the environment, whether that environment is the structure of human society that is put together by human beings themselves, or whether it is the natural environment or the physical environment around people. So therefore, transformation of human consciousness becomes absolutely important in order for human beings to be able to relate with each other better, and therefore understand the quintessence of what actually good living is all about, goodness is all about. Now, the current problem with the human consciousness is that thought seems to be occupying a whole area of the mind space or the brain. It's as if it's completely cluttering, crowding the space in the brain and the mind, and leaving very little space which is not cluttered, which is free, which has got some level of, let's say, emptiness around it, with which other things can come and fill in terms of kindness, love, compassion, goodness. There isn't space for all of this because thought seems to be crowding. Now, why is it doing? It's doing because thought usually springs from memory, which is the storehouse of knowledge, and knowledge is gathered to experience. So the path or the route is very clear. Experience, gathering of experience results in the accumulation of knowledge, which gets stored in memory, and thought springs from that. Now, as more and more human life gets more and more complex, thought is has no other way out. It's perforce filling up and crowding the entire space in the human mind. But at the same time, they also say that we are only using about 1% or 2% or 10% or 20%, but very little of the human brain, and that if it is used correctly, a large part of it can be kept uncluttered, uncrowded, free, and therefore have that level of freedom with which comes goodness and compassion. There isn't an opportunity for that, which, as I said now, is because of the crowding of thought. This is one aspect. The second aspect is, which is the propagation done by a whole bunch of institutions, religious institutions particularly, which also foster lots of schools of meditation, is that there is a method, that there is a practice, there can be training, you can have a system, you can have a formula, and do what is called meditation, for which you need to undertake this journey. And then when you undertake this meditative journey as per their systems and standards, they say that there is this opportunity for opening up a new avenue, new vistas in the mind and space. But then unfortunately, these methods and systems and formulas themselves are put together by thought. So on the one hand, there is a necessity to drain completely whatever has been accumulated in the mind. However, the approach seems to be exactly the converse, which is adding more stuff into the brain in order to empty the brain. That seems to be contradictory to fulfilling the purpose of emptying the mind or emptying the contents of consciousness. So, therefore, that doesn't seem to hold too much of water. I think what is more important than training or systems and methods or formulas is the act of pure observation, pure perception. It is okay to use thought in a limited area, in a designated space, in our daily, mundane, mechanical, routine living. You need thought to make a cup of coffee, you need thought to prepare a meal, you need thought to go to your bank, to go to the post office, to stop at a signal so that you don't jump over it and then cause an accident. Their thought is applicable. But then, unfortunately, it doesn't limit itself to its designated area. As I said, because of the complexity of life, there is more and more usage of this thought, and therefore it's cluttering the entire mind space. So, if thought is able to understand that it shouldn't clutter the mind space, then it can, and if it can restrict itself to its limited designated area, then the rest of the brain or rest of the mind can have that emptiness. And one does require this emptiness in order to have a life of freedom, a life of happiness, a life in which there is love and affection and sensitivity and compassion. You can't have that with a mechanistic process or a mechanistic approach to existence. Now, coming back to the system of meditation, uh, while they say that the practice or the chanting of mantras, or following a certain kind of a routine, disciplining yourself, getting up early in the morning, doing all kinds of, whether they are body postures, whether they are repetition of some kind of words or mantras, or focusing on some kind of a symbol or an object or what have you. You discipline yourself to do this, and then you do it perhaps 3 or 4 times a day, and because of which they say you can have thought control, and through thought control you are able to suppress thought and maybe free up some space in the mind. But then, unfortunately, these are all, the very word thought control itself means that thought is controlled. Thought is controlled for the period of this meditative process, let's say whether it's 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever. But once this concentrated focus of this meditative process ends, then we are back again to mischief. We are back again to the let's say the wayward ways of our thinking, and the mind seems to be chattering endlessly. It doesn't seem to stop at all. But unfortunately, that cannot get you anywhere. The mind has to stop its chattering very naturally, which means thought itself has to understand its role, its limited, let's say, activity, what it is designated for, and once it understands, it will naturally recede to the background and occupy its limited space and operate there correctly, sensibly, rationally, logically in our daily mechanical living. But in the rest of the space, it will not clutter. Having, let's say, initiated this through the act of perception, and perception means pure observation, and pure observation of perception naturally leads to insight, and insight is a work of intelligence. Once this happens, the complex web or the network of thought, which has more or less occupied the entire brain or the mind space, slowly starts untangling, and then makes thought, and thought itself recedes to the background. It leaves the rest of the area very, very free. So once the untangling happens, then there is a new rejuvenated feeling within one's own mind, and one is able to look at things completely differently. You find that there is a lot more sensitivity in relationship, there is a lot more understanding, there is a lot more affection in the way you interact with people, and with it comes its own compassion and intelligence. So in order to be able to get a spark of that, it's very, very important to understand that the meditative process is one which is not driven by systems or methods, but it is more an act of observation. Observation without an intention to change, observation or perception without an intention to transform it into something else or suppress it. It is just pure observation. So, with every thought, if one is able to engage in this observation process, then we find that very naturally thought withers away and goes back and occupies its designated area, leaving rest of the mind space very free. Now, why is this very important? Why should the human consciousness transform in the first place? Obviously, look at the kind of society that we have built. Look at the kind of relationships that we have. The world is in a crisis. Needless to mention, things like corona, which is happening presently, which are more, let's say, medical, biological in nature. But even we are adding more to the problem by having a whole bunch of psychological baggage and a psychological clutter which need to be uncluttered. Otherwise, as life gets more and more complex, and there is a natural tendency for human beings to make their lives more and more complex, thought will completely occupy, and it leaves very little scope to live a life of freedom and happiness. And if it is done now, when already we have lost a lot of time, and unfortunately we've also fallen prey to a lot of systems and methods and formulas propagated by many who are, let's say, who call themselves Gurujis, Swamijis, the masters, the teachers. They may have seen something, but there is always a transmission loss when they try and disseminate or share what they observed as truth to others. Because of this transmission loss, invariably the teachings get corrupted. I mean, take for example any kind of an epics across any culture, whether it's a Western culture or the Eastern culture. It is all about reward and punishment. A so-called good and a so-called evil. Reward and punishment. So there is somebody who does penance for several years. I mean, trees grow all around him, he is unaware of it. Trees grow on him, he is unaware of it. And he completes the penance and God appears before him and then asks him, yes, I will grant you the boon, what do you need? And he says, I want to be the ruler of this universe, nobody should kill me, I should be able to kill any enemy very easily. I mean, is this will this be the intent of a human being? Will this be the intent of a person who wants to rule the world? Obviously, all of this is kind of, made our minds completely, it's more about being brainwashed from a very, very young age, from childhood. And we are unable to clear this baggage. So perception is what is going to help us clear this baggage. So that's the first step. And once we are able to understand what pure observation is, what perception is, taking for example one aspect which is, let's say, attachment. Why are we attached? Attached to something, attached to a person. So why are we attached? Once there is a pure observation of attachment, we will be able to free ourselves of attachment. Perception frees ourselves of the attachment. Once we free ourselves of the attachment, there is also freedom from suffering. When there is freedom from suffering, naturally happiness and contentment springs forth, and that gives another new dimension of living. So I thought I will just open this up with this let's say a few words that I've spoken on the subject of observation, perception, and the need for transformation of human consciousness. I think one should carry forward this. We should do it in multiple formats, as I said at the outset. And feel free to please put your questions or any of your suggestions in the comment box below. And then I will definitely get in touch with you as to how we can roll and move this forward.